Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 1973 made-for-TV sequel, The Night Strangler. Now, The Night Strangler is a sequel to The Night Stalker. It is the second film in the series of TV movies that centers around the iconic character Carl Kolchak, played by Darren McGavin. And in The Night Strangler, this time around, Carl Kolchak is in Seattle, so he's gone from Las Vegas to Seattle, and he is now trying to figure out who is killing a bunch of women in the streets of Seattle. And he ultimately finds out that there's definitely something supernatural going on involving this killer who's going around strangling women and taking their blood. Now, much like the Night Stalker, it deals with another killer who's taking blood from his victims. And that's one of the few little nitpicks I have with this overall plot and this overall film. But other than that, I honestly was really impressed with this. I actually like this a little bit more than The Night Stalker. I especially love the setting of Seattle, and especially the underground, the Seattle underground. The set that they built was just amazing. It was really surreal and creepy, and the mood and the atmosphere was off the charts in terms of how eerie it was. And I just, there were a lot of shots in this that I thought were just downright spooky. And the Night Strangler has more of those shots for me. The Night Stalker had some moments like that, but this is the one that really knocks it out of the park for me. I also like the whole immortal doctor thing with the Night Strangler, and how he's this guy who, in order to stay alive after all these years, he has to have some sort of formula. I like the fact that where he hides is in the Seattle Underground, which makes it so it's hard for people to find him. I love that he has his own sort of home down there and one of the most iconic scenes in the entire film, definitely one of the most memorable, is a scene where Carl Kolchak is going around and he sees this dining room just covered in cobwebs, and there's a bunch of skeletons sitting at the dinner table. And in the way it's lit and the way that the sequence is shot, and way everything's put together in the scene, it just really makes it really is pretty bone chilling. Actually, it's very creepy. And I thought that this one was definitely one of those TV movies that, just like The Night Strangler, The Night Stalker, I have The Night Strangler on my brain, so forgive me. Just like The Night Stalker, it had higher production values. It felt like it was right at home with other films from that particular time period. You could see this release in theaters, in which I think it actually was, if I remember correctly, because there's a 90-minute version of the film that ended up being released, I believe, on home video. As it was definitely released on this double feature set, and I think the Blu-ray is also the 90-minute version, because the original broadcast version was only 74 minutes. Now, just like the Night Strangler, it's written by Richard Matheson, who he's such a legendary writer, and he does it again here. He did a really excellent job with the script for The Night Stalker, and he's tasked with a script for The Night Strangler, and he squeezes every last bit out of it and really does a bang-up job with the script. I definitely felt it was quite impressive in terms of all the different history and everything he throws in there, with how long the Night Strangler's been around, and with the dialogue and with other elements. Yes, it does seem a little bit like deja vu with the Strangler going around killing people and taking their blood, but it's not a total carbon copy. There's definitely enough there where it feels like it's a different story. It doesn't feel like it's a total retread. And a big part of that goes to Richard Matheson and his writing. Dan Curtis directed this particular film, and unlike the previous film, The Night Stalker, he was actually behind the camera this time around. He wasn't producing it. And he did an admirable job. I really felt that Dan Curtis, his direction in this was terrific. I felt that his use of angles was brilliant. There are multiple different shots in the film where he uses angles just beautifully. He did a really good job working with sets, especially the Seattle Underground set and other different settings as well. Got the most out of his actors and his actresses. Just a really solid. I think solid's actually an understatement. It's a really stellar job in terms of directing. Really nailed it with the visuals, nailed it with the performances, even threw in some nice angles and different camera takes and stuff like that. So yeah, Dan Curtis proved that he was every bit as good of a director as he was a producer with this particular output. The film features a score by Bob Kober, and the score is there. I would say it's a step up from the score from The Night Stalker, but it does not really hit the same notes as the score for the TV series does. It definitely isn't as memorable. The cast is also up to the challenge, and they definitely do pull out a win here. Darren McGavin is just pitch perfect as Carl Kolchak, the role he was born to play. He just plays this role with such relish, and it's just, you love watching Kolchak do his thing. And a big part of that is because of Darren McGavin. And I just, it's one of those things that, yes, the character is well written and the script is excellent by Matheson, but it's McGavin's performance that really brings this character to life and really resonates with you as an audience member. And it's just a very memorable character and a very memorable performance. And he just picks up right where he left off here in The Night Strangler. Anne Pflug plays Louise Harper, who is the love interest, sort of a partner for Carl Kolchak. I liked her. The only thing I didn't like about her is her poor fashion sense. I mean, there's this one scene where she's wearing this god-awful tablecloth, picnic table shirt and like this really ugly big giant hat that has the same plaid picnic tablecloth pattern on it. Other than that, I thought she did really well. I liked her chemistry and her back and forth with Darren McGavin, and she was definitely easy on the eyes, so to speak. Simon Oakland comes back as Tony Vincenzo and just sends all kinds of sparks off the screen in sequences with Darren McGavin. Darren and Simon just have really explosive chemistry. They really just, whenever they're in a scene together, they're loud and they're boisterous, but their personalities really do clash in a way that's just incredibly satisfying and a lot of fun. Scott Brady plays Captain Roscoe Schubert. He's fine, as are all these other actors and actresses who play different roles in the movie. You also have Margaret Hamilton, who plays a professor named Hester Crabwell, who I believe is called upon to help collaborate some of the things involving the antagonist in the film, the Night Strangler. And it was nice to see Margaret Hamilton, who you might recognize as the Wicked Witch from Wizard of Oz. Al Lewis is also in this, who played Grandpa in The Munsters, and he's completely unrecognizable in this film as a tramp. I did not even know it was him until I saw the end credits. And he did a really good job. It seems like he's a guy who was typecast. A lot of people just saw him as just Grandpa Munster, and here he shows that he can do more than that. He can play roles that aren't just Grandpa Munster. And it seems like it's a little too bad that he didn't really seem to get a fair shake as the years went by in terms of any sort of other casting choices. Um, you also have Richard Anderson, who plays the titular villain. He plays the Night Strangler. He plays Dr. Richard Malcolm. And I thought he was quite intimidating. I really thought that the guy definitely had a presence about him. I thought it was a good performance. I would say that the 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 scariest aspect though of the Night Strangler is that one what it was like a police sketch of what the Night Strangler looked like based on somebody's eyewitness account, and it was really eerie and really freaky looking because he's got like he looks like he's burned. It almost looks like a prototype for Darkman because he's got like bottom his teeth are showing, like he's got a bit of a skull, like it looks like a zombie. Uh, yeah, that was pretty freaky, and even for 1973, that was pretty freaky. And there was a little bit near the end where you saw him, and he's like all old and wrinkled and stuff near the end. But the creepiest and definitely the freakiest image of the Night Strangler is the one that's featured on the cover of one of the newspapers in the film, the police sketch. Now, as I was saying earlier, there is some deja vu here with the plot where you have another killer who's going around killing people and also taking their blood. Now, but what makes it not feel like it's so much deja vu is the difference in setting. Kolchak goes on from Las Vegas, where he was kicked out of, to Seattle. I love how he gets a job because he just happens to run into Vincenzo. He happens to run into his nemesis, his former boss, Tony Vincenzo. He runs into him in the bar, and he's trying to sell his story of the vampire to people in the bar, and eventually he runs into Vincenzo, and Vincenzo gives him a job, and then the Night Strangler murders start occurring, and of course Kolchak ends up figuring out that there's more to it than meets the eye. And you even have veteran horror character actor John Carradine in this film as the boss. He's the boss of the Seattle newspaper, and he's not really having any of Kolchak's shit. And Kolchak meets with the love interest, Louise Harper, who works as a belly dancer, and she could have been a potential target for the Night Strangler because she's in the general vicinity, the same vicinity that he's in. And she hits it off with Kolchak. They team up. And eventually it leads to the Seattle Underground, which is actually a real thing. There really is a downtown Seattle underground. There is what Seattle used to be. It's actually a real thing. Now, the sequences that were shot for the film were shot on a soundstage. They weren't actually shot in the Seattle Underground, but it's still such a great setting, and the film really does do a amazing job bringing this setting to life with the fog and with the lighting, and it's just I just love it. I love the look of the Seattle Underground in this particular film, and I just like the fact that hey, it's in the Pacific Northwest. That is such an I truly do feel the Pacific Northwest is such an underrated setting for films like this or for plots like this. It was really nice to see Kolchak get out of his comfort zone and go to some place like Seattle instead of Las Vegas or San Francisco or Chicago. And just like the Night Stalker, he uncovers the mystery. There's something supernatural involved with it. A lot of the people don't believe him. And he ends up vanquishing the villain at the end of the film, and then ends up having to move on to another town because once again Carl Kolchak gets the shaft. But this time around, Vincenzo goes with him, along with his new love interest, uh, Joanne Pflug, who plays Louise Harper. So along with Louise Harper, so who would never be seen again in the series. But hey, it was nice to see her in this regardless. I liked her, and I wonder why that was the case. I wonder why she didn't really do anything or wasn't a part of Kolchak the Night Stalker, the TV series that would follow this TV movie. Now, this came out January 16th, 1973. Like I said earlier, the TV broadcast version was 74 minutes. The DVD release was 90 minutes. I haven't seen the 74-minute long cut, but I can definitely say that the 90-minute long cut is not boring or anything. It doesn't seem like it's overly long or anything like that. And it's one of those films that goes by at a good pace. It keeps you engaged in terms of the story, in terms of the script, in terms of the characters. And for a horror theme, it definitely does have quite a few scenes that are genuinely horrific, that are genuinely creepy, that are genuinely spine-tingling. And apparently there were plans for a third film. Richard Matheson it was actually going to be based on one of his stories, but it was actually ended up being completed by science fiction and horror novelist William F. Nolan. The third film was set aside when ABC elected to order the TV series and have it produced by Universal instead. The third film was called The Night Killers. It was set in Honolulu, Hawaii, which I would have been curious to see because I was born in Honolulu. So that would be kind of fun to see a Night Stalker film that takes place in my birthplace. And it had Tony Vincenzo hiring Kolchak to work for him. And once again, Kolchak discovers a cover-up, this time involving a mysterious UFO, a nuclear power plant, and important people being murdered and replaced by androids. Kolchak ties all this together, believing that the aliens on the UFO landed on Earth, intending to set up a colony and replacing key government figures with these androids to assist them in their secret colony. Seems pretty out there, but I gotta admit, I would have liked to have seen it, but in place of the TV series, no. So that's my thing. It would have been fun to see, but not in place of the TV series, because the TV series is how I was first introduced to the character and to the wonders and just the fun of this overall franchise. And I just think the TV series is a better route to go. It's a hard act to follow when you have one of the most popular, groundbreaking TV movies in The Night Stalker, and then you follow it up with a really strong, spectacular, stellar sequel in The Night Strangler, which, for me personally, was a step up above The Night Stalker. And it's just one of those hard acts to follow. So I'm glad that they didn't go that route and they went with the TV series. Now, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward plot. Once again, it's just like the first film where Kolchak is investigating some supernatural goings-on and trying to solve the mystery. And there's a change in setting, and there's a few other different characters, and there's a different villain. But overall, it's a lot of the same formula, but the formula works. I'm not going to complain because the formula really does work. And I don't really know what else to say about it, except if I were to rate it out of 5 stars. I think I might have given The Night Strangler 4.5. Or was it 4? Either way, if I gave it the 4.5, I give this 4.5. Or 4.75 out of 5. Like, if I could do something like that, I would, because I do like this a little bit more than the Night Stalker. I said it was a step above, but really what I mean is like a tiny step. It's not like a giant step above the Night Stalker, but it's still a really wonderful TV movie that I highly recommend. I recommend the first film, and if you like that, definitely check out The Night Strangler. Anyway, yeah, that's my thoughts on The Night Strangler, and thanks for watching, and as always, I will see you later. See ya.